Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph will begin Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Yirmiyah v'Rabbi Bun Bar Chiya v'Yasivin v'Amrin, they were sitting together and they said, Taman Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Tam Rabbi Shimon, Shekein Nekeva Shabayiv, Ksher Lavoila. Rabbi Yochanan said the reason that Rabbi Shimon said that a nekeva, it is makdish a nekeva for an oila. A nekeva you cannot bring for an oila. But he says, even though in spite of that it has kedushas aguf, because we do find the case of a nekeva that's brought as an oila by this ha'if. Uba Amar Hachin, and here Rabbi Elazar said that birds, that we say that if a person is makdish a chosav on the birds, that you sell them, you can sell them even without a mum. You sell them even without a mum for oilas. Now, why don't we say that it should have a level of kedushas aguf, and therefore you can't sell it without a mum? What's the chilek in the two cases? Amar Rav Yosef says, Kamaisa b'hada Amar Rav Shmuel b'shem Rav Zira. In the case over there that it was said in the name of Rav Shmuel said in the Rav Zira, Kol she'ena yachol lekorav lohi v'loy dameha, anything which you cannot be makavit itself. Then if you say that if you were to have a kedushas aguf, you can't be makavit, not it and not its value, not its monetary value, lo kacha ela hekdesh domin. Therefore, we say that it can't have kedushas aguf if you can't be makavit it itself, and even the monetary value, you can't use it for the monetary value to be makdish on the mizbeach. Then it doesn't have kedushas aguf. So it's like hekdesh domin, vat amas yeus. And therefore, what you said is correct in Rabbi Elazar, because because the bird, if he's makdish nachasav, it has a burden that he can't be makdish the bird itself, because it's the bakar and not oifus. You can't be makdish the oif for the oila. It's only babakar v'loy v'oif Darshu. And livdaisa enat yachol shein loyef pigeon. Now, if you would say that it would have kedushas aguf, you can't be paid a oif. There's no pidyon for the oif if it has kedushas aguf. Therefore, we must say the fum kein tzarich meimar loikachel kedushas domim. Therefore, you must say that it only has kedushas domim, because if it had a kedushas aguf, then you would not be able to be makravit. You wouldn't be able to be paid. And if you can't be makravit and you can't be paid by definition, therefore, it can't have kedushas aguf. So therefore, al korcha has to be that it has kedushas domim, and therefore, if it has kedushas domim, you can sell it without a mum. We learn the sheet of Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, the name of Rav Shimon, who says that it makes no difference if it's a Pesach, an oiler, an asham. If he was makdish a nekeva, it does not have kedushas aguf, and therefore there's no din of truma. The Talmud said in the name of Rav Yochanan, Rav Bar Nagri, Omar Kumi Ravila b'shem Rav Yochanan. They said, Taima dehen Tanya. It said the reason for they wanted to give him a core for Shimon Yehuda's sheet. It says that what we learned in the Brisa, the pasuk says, V'im kol behemoth tmeya asher lo yakrivim imana korban Hashem. Says if there's a behemoth tmeya, that you cannot bring a korban to Hashem for this type of behema, so that there's a pidyon, you evaluate it, a hemed v'hirich, and you make a pidyon for it. So matam tmeya, what does it mean by tmeya? Does it mean literally tmeya? Can't mean literally tmeya, because that's the pasuk discusses that later. So ella fil tmeya b'is Hashem. Rather, what it must mean, that not literally that it's tomei that it became into contact with tuma. It means tmeya b'is Hashem, meaning it's disqualified, and it's disqualified from this category, and it can be redeemed, it can be paid immediately without a mum. And what is something which is disqualified from this category? It is, for instance, a nekeva for an oila, an asham, or a pesach, and it can be paid without a mum, and because it doesn't have kedushas aguf. More of a kasha, how can you say that? It says that you have to stand it up and evaluate it and appraise it. Now, you only need hamad of harach for something that has kedushas aguf, but according to this sheet over here, it doesn't have kedushas aguf, just like it doesn't need tzmura. It has no kedushas aguf, so it should need hamad of harach. So therefore, that cannot be the pshat. Now the Gemara takes a totally different approach to it. Rav Zera B'Shem Rav Lezer Lo Yamar Kain, he did not explain it this way. Ella, rather in the following way, in the opposite way. V'im kol behemoth tamei surely akrivim ramena korban l'Hashem. The pasuk says that if there was a person who was makdish a behemoth tamei, which you can't bring to a korban, so you evaluated, you talmud of arocha. What does it mean? Kol she'ena ru'uy le'korv lo'kan v'lo'y makam acher eino yiseh t'mura. Anything which is you cannot be makriv here or in any other place, it does not make it t'mur. It does not have a kedushas aguf, and there's no t'mur. You can be paided immediately, therefore without a mum. Yatzin the kevel oila, which excludes in the kevel, meaning it's not the shita, it's the opposite of this previous shita. Yatzin the kevel oila, which excludes in the kevel oila, afal pishen ruila kavkan ruila karu makamachir, because it, even though you can't be makriv it here in this particular case, you can't be makriv a nekeva for an oila for Pesach or an Asham, but you could be makriv it somewhere elsewhere, for instance, the Shlomi. But in this shita also, the more of Avon Rabun Bon Kumi Rab Zera Hari Haravev and near B'Shein Rim Lakar of Loikan V'Loy B'Makamach Abahema was Ravev and nearby. In these cases, it was sodomized. You can't bring it a korban in any event. There's no case where you can bring this as a korban. And Varein Oisin Tamura. And yet, we learned out in the Tesefta, a drasha that Tamura, it could make Tamura. So therefore, this can't be what the pasuk over here is referring to. Amar Loin, he said, Afani Le'amarti Ela Tzmei Mamash. He said, when therefore, he changed the explanation. He says, when it says Tomei, he said the word Tomei means literally Tomei. It means a non-kosher animal. It means an animal that was from the species that weren't kosher. Therefore, it's not similar to the case of Raveh and Nirba, because Raveh and Nirba are from a species that you could bring as a korban. These particular animals you can't, but it's from a species that you can't, as opposed to Tmeya, which is Tmeya Mamash, which is a species that you can't. Bekasha, how can you say that? Bedog, Sivahemed Veherich, it says that he sends it up and he evaluates it, appraises it. Can you say that this is talking about a Tame Mamish? We have other psukim to talk about a Tame Mamish. Therefore, it must be referring to not a non-kosher type of behemah. It must be referring to Tmeya, meaning it's referring to a case of where we say it has a mum. And it has a mum, meaning that this animal in particular, you can't bring as a korban, has a mum, but this species you can't. And it should be the same thing, that it should be a Raveya, and Nirba should be the same as a Tomei. And therefore, you should say, according to that, if you equate the two, you would have to equate the two and say there's no Tmura, but we know they could make a Tmura, therefore, this whole drasha is the whole approach that we don't accept Razira's drasha in any which way. We don't accept the drasha at all. Zok the Mishnah, different topic. They set the prices every 30 days, the prices that the Lishka would pay for the items that they were buying. So anyone accepts himself to supply the flour that are needed for the menachos. So for instance, he says they set a price, and it's 4 saw per sela, and the price of the flour went up. So therefore, it went up, and now you can only buy 3 saw per sela. Meaning, when they set the price, it was lower, and you could buy 4 saw for the sela. The price went up, and now you can only buy 3 saw for a sela. Yisapik me'arba. The supplier has to supply it at the original price of 4. Now, the main din there's a difference in the din by hektish and by hedjed. By hedjed, when you say a person buys something, there's mashicha. He's kind of with mashicha. It's when you draw it into your possession. By paying the money, the transaction is not complete. By hektish, it is complete. So in this particular case, when hektish pays the money, they set the price. It's considered to be a completed transaction, and therefore, even if the price goes up, hektish does not have to pay the higher price. But the Mishnah continues, Misholoish Vamdemarba, if they set the price at 3, the price is 3 saw per sela, then the price went down, and now you can buy 4 per sela. In this case as well, Yisaping Marba, the supplier has to provide it at the lower price of 4. Because in this case, we say that hektish should not be disadvantaged, should not be lower than a hedjit. Sheyad hektish ala yaina. The yad hektish has an upper hand. And another way we see that hektish has the upper hand is that if the flour becomes wormy, the seller, he bears a loss. If the wine turns sour, and he bears a loss. He doesn't get his money, he's not entitled to the money until you're makriv it on the mizbeach. So we say, in these cases, hektish has a yad al yaina. Zakta Gemara, Tana b'shem Rabbi Shimon. So we learned the name of Rabbi Shimon, miyad hayo kablam es ma'isem, that the suppliers got their money immediately. The Kohanim are very diligent, and they were makriv it before it has any chance of getting wormy, because Kohanim is reason, and therefore they will get their money right away. Hadalach ha-truma, hadalach ha-truma, hadalach ha-truma. Perek Chamish. Zot the Mishnah, Elohim Amamunim Shahayu b'Mikdash. These are the administrators, the Mamunim, who were in the Beis HaMikdash during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. So they had the different offices that they were in charge of. So who are these people? Yochanan ben Pinchas al Chaysamas. He was Yochanan ben Pinchas over the Chaysamas, the tokens. So we'll see in the Gemara exactly what the functions of these particular items were, but he was on the tokens that a person gave the money, had a token which entitled him to purchase a particular korban. Achaya al nesochim. Achaya was in charge of the nesochim, means the menochas, the flour and the oil for menochas. So, and Masia ben Shmuel al Payosas. He was in charge of the gorelas. So they will see in the Gemara exactly what the gorelas, what type of gorelas, but they made lots, they made gorelas. Psacha ala kinam. He was in charge of the pairs of birds, the birds that you had to bring for the korbanos. Who was this Psachia? Psachia is a Mordechai. Psachia is the famous Mordechai at Tzaddik. And Lama Nikrishmai Psachia. Why was he called Psachia? Shai Pesach Dvarim V'Darshan, because he would open up the hidden items, the things that people couldn't understand, the mysterious items, and explain them. The idea of Meshivim Loshen, and he knew 70 languages. People would come from all over the world to purchase the kinim. He would be able to understand what they were saying. He was there in charge of the kinim. So the next office that is the Mishnah list is Ben Achia al Chil Me'ayim. He was in charge of to give treatment for the Kohanim who had Chil Me'ayim. We'll see in the Gemara why Kohanim were particularly afflicted with stomach ailments. So he knew how to cure them. Nechunya Chayfer Shichin, he used to dig the ditches. He was a digger of ditches, that to make sure that there was enough water, supply of water in Yerushalayim. Gavini Kruz, Gavini was the crier. He used to call out. Then when the time to be makriv the korban hatomid in the morning. Ben Gever al Ilasharim, he was in charge of locking the gates. Ben Bevai Mamuna al Hapikia, he was in charge of the wicks for the menorah, to burn the nayras on the menorah. Ben Arza al Tziltzal, Ben Arza, he was in charge of the cymbals. The Levium, when to announce the time for the Levium to start the singing, so they banged on the cymbals. Hugras ben Levi al Ashir, he was in charge of the shir, of the songs, of the choirs of the Levium. Beis Garmal Ma'aseh Lechem Aponim, they were in charge of to bake the breads, the special Lechem Aponim. Vesaftinis al Ma'aseh Keteris, they were in charge of processing and making the Keteris. The incense for Lazar ala Pareiches, he was over the curtains. He was in charge of the curtains, who wove the curtains for the Beis HaMikdash. And Upinchas HaMalbish, he dressed the Kohanim. So we'll see in the Gemara the more details on all of these offices. Zok the Gemara. So why do we list Davka these 15 and these 15 officers? Rav Chizki Amar, Rabbi Siban, Rabbanan. They said the name of Rav Simon, and they said that they had a machloikis of why these particular ones were mentioned. Chadamar one says, Kashiri dar vadar abba limnais. The Mishnah, there's many more officers than these 15, but the Mishnah is mentioning the most outstanding ones that were in the whole course of the history of the Beis HaMikdash. B'charno Amar, and the other one says, Mi shaya boisador mana masha b'dora. The other one says that no, it happened to be the 15 that mentioned in the Mishnah. They were lived at the same at one particular time, the same as the Tana of the Mishnah. He listed the 15 that were in his time. Man Damar Shiri Kol Dor Vador Baal Limnus, the one that says that it lists all the ones, the most upright ones of all the generations. Therefore, all of them are the Mishnah are upright. Now, even though the Mishnah in Yuma criticizes three of the families of Hugas, the families of Hugas, Garman, Avtinais, but nevertheless, that's only in a particular manner, and we would say, therefore, and even in that, they were able to defend themselves, because where all of the ones who listen to the Mishnah are tzaddikim. Therefore, we'll say that it's on kulam, on all of them. That's what it refers to when it says zecher tzadik levracha. That it says zecher tzadik levracha. It refers to all of them because they're also considered to be the tzaddikim. They're also considered to be tzaddikim. And man Amar Shahayim Mana Masha Bedor, but the one who says that no, they're not all tzaddikim, he just mentioned the particular of the 15 that happened to be in his generation. Therefore, there's no indication that they're all tzaddikim. Therefore, we wouldn't say that Zechel Tzadik Levracha refers to all of them and to these families as well. And therefore, we would say that when it says Zecher Tzadik Levracha, it's not referring to them. Kulan Huaymer V'Shem Sharm Yirkov, and therefore, when it says V'Shem Sharm Yirkov, that the name of the Rishon will rot, it's referring to not only the family Ben Kamsar, but it's also referring to Hugras Garmu and Avtinais. Valmi Nemar Zecher Tzadik Levracha, and who is it saying referring to Zecher Tzadik Levracha? Because according to this Mandam, we're not listening to Dafka Tzadikim. So Ben Kotten V'Chaveru is referring to Ben Kotten and Chaveru, who were mentioned in the Mishnah over there previously of their virtuous deeds that they had performed.